Go ahead.
Okay, council, we apologize for that technical difficulty for anyone who is watching this online. We apologize that we were not able to live stream it. We did have some technical issues with our live streaming. So we are doing the best we can with what we are handed in this situation. So I'm going to call the meeting to order, remind council to please disclose of any pecuniary interests at the appropriate time. And we are going to go to 4A, which is the minutes of the previous council meeting. Council, how do you want to deal with those minutes? Councillor Morris, are you moving to receive and file those minutes?
That is correct. I motion to receive and file the minutes.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Westgate, thank you. Any questions or comments, errors, or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor of receiving and filing? That is carried. Thank you, council. And we have no business arising from the previous meetings, so we will go to scheduled meetings and events. There is a proposed scheduling and special council meeting on Wednesday, October 28th at 4 o'clock following the Public Works Committee meeting for several drain meetings. We have gotten behind a little bit on our drain meetings, so I'm sure Andrew will be happy to get those caught up. How does that date and time work for council? Looks like
I'm good.
Be fine. So we will schedule that in. Do you need a motion to have that scheduled in, Amanda? Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder to that? Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Westgate, all in favor. That is carried. So we will look forward to passing all those drains. That will be a very exciting meeting, I am sure. We can move on. We have a few minutes, so we'll go to councillors' commitments and items. Does any councillors have any additions to their commitments? I know we're all anxious to rush off on cruises and go down to Cuba again, but I don't think that's in the cards anytime too soon. We will go to Councillor White then. Councillor, do you have any items for council today? Nope. All right, and Councillor Westgate.
Just a couple little things. The flags we're putting up for the Legion, are we going to get at that in the next week or so?
Teresa or Amanda, do you want to handle that?
Yes, Councillor Westgate, we're looking at probably early next week. Been talking with Watford Warwick Horticulture Society, and the baskets are doing really quite well. And they're hoping to get this week out of them. So we'll look at doing that next week.
And the other thing I had, the electric parking charger at the arena, is it working? Because I was told it wasn't.
As far as I know, but it's something I can look into.
I believe that Blue Water Power owns that charger, so we can maybe contact them. Okay.
Well, we could check it first and see if it's working or not.
Yeah. Anything else, Councillor Westgate?
No, that's all I had.
Okay, and Councillor Morris.
The only thing I had, I got the phone call I had last night regarding the water main on Sunset, but I'm going to leave that to Andrew to explain in his report.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I have nothing for council today, so we are going to move on to our delegations council. Our first, we're going to give Amanda a minute to welcome, I believe we have someone from the public who is interested in the first application. So we will get him into the meeting and then we will begin.
Mayor, our actual applicant hasn't called back into the meeting yet. Could I actually ask that you continue on with other business just for a few moments while I reach out to him?
I can, yep. So
Thank
we will
you.
go to 10A council, which is the accounts, the GL report. Do we have any questions or comments on that report today?
I guess the only thing, we're into October. Trevor, do you think our income from environmental will meet budget and be, or will we be short?
I think it'll meet budget. I don't think it's going to surpass budget like past years.
Okay,
They're trending up in terms of tonnage. I was hoping I'd see the September numbers before this meeting, but I haven't yet.
okay, thank you.
It's a good question. Tonnage was down quite a bit during the shutdown. Construction was a big part of that, I believe. And even the restaurants being closed. Any other questions or comments on that? Seeing none, we do need a motion to receive and file that report. Moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor Westgate. All in favor? That is carried. And we will go on to the, sorry, Council, the non-action correspondence. Did anyone have anything that they wanted to highlight from the non-action correspondence today? Councillor Morris.
I guess I got a question, maybe Phil can answer. Under the building permits for our cannabis operation, industrial structure, it says CCAN construction. I guess in my head, I see CCAN as container ship containers. Can you please tell me what the building is going to look like? That's not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I was wondering that myself, Councillor Morris.
Okay, I believe it's probably going to be a metal-sided building. So typically, if you do CCAN constructions, what happens, the CCANs come in, you stick like 2 or 3 in a row, and then you knock out the interior walls. So in the end, you end up with metal constructed building around the outside, but they're not actually CCANs anymore. You can't transport them off-site once built. Because as soon as you pull it off from the building, typically that interior wall is no longer there. The roof may have disappeared. So they use CCANs as your base, knock out the walls, and they're pretty much a metal frame building at that point.
So it will meet our property standards
Yes,
that way?
Yeah.
Okay.
it need to meet that, but it's effectively it'd be a metal
Okay.
frame building. So
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, we do need a motion to receive and file. Councillor Morris and Councillor White. All in favor of that? That is carried. And we had 2 action correspondence on here. One was from the Town of Amherstburg request for amendments to bill. And the other, the Ontario Heritage Act. Don't see anyone leaping at that, so we do need a message, a motion to receive and file the remainder. Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Westgate. All in favor? That is carried. How are we doing, Amanda?
Good, thank you. I just was in touch with the representative of the applicant. They are just waiting for the email to come through with the revised credentials, so they'll be on in a moment. If you'd like, I could let in the member of the public, Mayor Rumboats, and set them up
Yes, that would be great.
right now. Okay, great. Just give me a moment.
Are we good to start?
Hi, Ken.
Yeah,
Ken, can you
now,
hear
yeah.
us? Excellent. Thanks so much for your flexibility. Mayor Rumboats, we are still waiting for the applicant representative. So I might suggest waiting, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay. Ken, we can hear you, but we can't see you, just so you're
Oh,
aware.
okay, yeah. I don't know why.
Hey, it's one of those days with technology.
There we go.
There we go.
Here is Philip Kitely joining as well just now.
Okay.
Hi, Philip, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. So we can hear you, but we can't
Maybe
see
you
you.
can see you.
Oh, there
Okay,
we
I
can
just
see
turned the
you.
camera on. Hi, Andrew.
Excellent.
Okay, I will
Hi, everyone.
move on to the next item of our council agenda, and that is the holding of the public meeting with respect to an application to amend the zoning bylaw and council's consideration of a bylaw to amend Warwick's zoning bylaw 121 of 2012 on lands described as Plan 6 lots 206 to 210 and Park Lot 10, Plan 9, Lot 34, Lot 35, Lot 36, Lot 37, 425 Ontario Street in the Township of Warwick. The purpose of this bylaw is to rezone a portion of the property from residential 1, R1 zone to the residential 1-7, R17 zone, and to amend the permitted uses and maximum lot coverage within the residential 1-7, R17 zone. Amanda, I'll ask you what the method of giving public notice of this meeting and the date that notice was given.
Thank you, Mayor Rumbouts. Public notice was provided by regular mail and posted on the property on September 10th, 2020.
Okay, thank you. Any persons requiring further notice of the passing of the bylaw should give their name and full mailing address to the clerk before leaving the meeting. Any persons present who wish to make oral or written submissions should provide the clerk with their name and full mailing address, which I believe both our members have. Also, all persons wishing to address the bylaw should ask their question through the chair, which is me. We are going to proceed. The clerk will now read any written submissions.
There were no written submissions.
Thank you. The planner will now give his report. Philip, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. So the applicant would like to change the zoning for a portion of lands at 425 Ontario Street from the residential 1 zone to a site-specific residential 1-7 zone. This application is part of a larger subdivision application for the creation of 20 residential lots on the subject property. This proposed amendment will amend the permitted uses on the site and increase the maximum site coverage allowed on proposed lots. Just a bit of background of the site. The subject property used to be the home of the Watford Public School before it was closed in 2000 and the building was demolished in 2015. The site-specific residential R17 zone was originally established to permit non-residential uses to operate out of the closed school building. And then on the second page, just there's a diagram that shows what the current zone is and what the boundary between the two current zones. So the R17 zone is the pink or the red, and then the R1 is the blue. So eventually this bylaw amendment will make the whole area pink. In terms of the official plan, the zone bylaw provides specific development standards related to parking requirements, setbacks, coverage, building, separation. And what this amendment will do is it's going to remove the uses within the R17 zone that relate to the former Watford school buildings, which have not been on the property since 2015. When the school buildings were removed in 2015, no amendment to the zone bylaw was made at that time, since there are no proposals for the future redevelopment of the site. So the proposed 20-lot subdivision meets the maximum parcel or permitted residential development, which is, so maximum density permitted is 20 units per hectare, and this property is 1.14 hectares. That allows roughly 22 lots. There's not an issue there. In terms of the second change it's going to make is it's going to propose a 40% site coverage limit, whereas the R1 currently just allows 30%. So a 40% site coverage on the proposed lots, which are roughly 600 square meters maximum size, would allow for the same size of a development as the standard 30% site coverage on the surrounding properties, which are 800 square meters. So you can still get the same size development and dwellings, but just on a smaller lot. So this increased site coverage will allow for higher residential density while ensuring that the size of new dwellings are compatible with existing character and pattern of the neighborhood. And then under the provincial policy statement, this redevelopment is applicable. It says new development taking place in designated growth areas should occur adjacent to an existing built-up area. This is right in the middle of a built-up area, and should have compact form, a mix of uses and densities that allow for the efficient use of land and infrastructure and public service facilities. The proposed redevelopment of this property will have a compact form and will tie into the existing water and sewer infrastructure. And that's pretty much a summary of the report. And attached is a draft planner survey. It has yet to go through its process with the county. So that drawing is for information purposes.
Okay, thank you very much. So we will now hear from members of the public. We'd like to hear from those in favor of the bylaw change. First. Ken, or Philip, this is a time that we would hear from you.
Okay. Obviously, I'm acting as the applicant's agent on this particular application. Yeah, so we were asked to make this amendment, as Philip mentioned, because we're actually proposing a development of 19 lots on the draft plan that meets all the other zoning requirements for current R1, including frontage, depth of property, minimum lot size. It was just pointed out that keeping the 30% coverage would limit house sizes to around 1,600 square feet. And the developer just wanted a little more flexibility if he had a footprint that would be, say, 1,700 or 1,800 square feet. So that was why it was suggested that we made the application to increase the zoning coverage, as has happened on some other new subdivisions in Warwick Township and in particular Watford. So
Okay.
This is just clarification on why we've asked for this zoning amendment. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you for that clarification. Is there any other comments or questions about this? Seeing none, the public meeting is now concluded. Council has 15 days from this meeting to decide whether or not to pass this bylaw. Council's decision will be mailed to those who have requested a copy. Any persons or agency may appeal to the local planning appeal tribunal, LPAT, in respect to the bylaw by filing with the clerk of the Township of Warwick not later than 20 days after the day that written notice was given. A notice of appeal must set out the objection to the bylaw and the reasons in support of the objection, plus the applicable fee to the LPAT. Thank you, everyone, for attending. All right, so we will move on to our next delegation council. And we'll give Amanda a minute to welcome Giovanni Spadafora from, is that correct? Okay. From Baker Tilly Sarnia, who's going to do a presentation on the financial statements.
Excellent. He's joining us now, Mayor Brumbaugh. Would it be beneficial for council if I share also his PowerPoint presentation on the screen?
I've got it here in front of me. It doesn't matter to me.
I think we've heard some feedback. It helps our viewers. So unless there's an objection, I may proceed. We'll just wait for him to join.
Okay, I think that's a good idea, Amanda. Council, just so you're aware, I can't see everybody when we do share the screen. So if you have questions or comments, just make it some kind of a noise so that I know that you're wanting to speak to an issue.
On the previous one, does council usually get to ask a question or two?
Well, I had asked that. I don't,
So it looks like in the procedure sheet, we followed the same procedure we always follow, Councillor Westgate.
I
But of
think you could have
course,
asked anytime during this.
yeah. So you can ask questions, but I think our planner has left us now.
Yes.
I can get him
I
back.
just, during the meeting, I thought we normally got a chance, but it's
There
okay.
wasn't a specific time that council could ask a question written out in the procedure sheet that I saw.
No, you're correct. And I guess there typically hasn't been. We haven't had a rezoning in a while. Does council have questions? We can arrange following this delegation to have our planner come back on for questions on this application.
Because we do have 15 days to make the decision, so now would be a good time to ask questions. So
We
can get-
should make the decision right away so they can get on with it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I just wondered, are they all single dwelling homes, like single?
I do know that
Yeah.
answer, Councillor Westgate. It's a good one. Yes, the proposal is for single family dwellings on this property.
And he answered my other ones about the size of the
Houses.
houses.
is
That was
there,
really-
do we have standards as far as building in residential housing as a township? Or how
In the
does that work? I know when we did the development ourselves, we set certain standards that so much of the house has to be bricked but is there anything like that with a new
Wouldn't that be
development?
in the site plan?
It's usually in the plan of subdivision.
Yeah.
Right, so that will be in the plan of subdivision process led by the County of Lambton and their planning
Okay.
department with our input. So at this time, no, we do have a related subdivision application on this property, and it will be processed following. We wanted to wait for the rezoning first.
Okay,
We won't have a say like we had last time, though.
No, we will not. Correct. Thank you, Councillor Westgate. So the standards will be set by the county, and no, they likely will not be as specified, Mayor Rumbouts, to your point, as the scenic court development.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
Giovanni, we can't hear you or see you at this point. I'll ask you to turn your microphone and there we go.
I was just letting you guys discuss.
Just waiting us out. We've had some technical issues, so we're only a couple of minutes late for your delegation, but that's the way things work right now. You just roll with the punches.
Mhm.
So Amanda's going to share her screen and we will follow along with the presentation.
Great.
And I'm turning it over to you.
Okay, so I'll try and I'll let you know, Amanda, when I'm switching so that you know. Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to present this this year's audited statements here. Did a bit of a breakdown. I think from last year you'll be familiar with some of these slides. However, there are some additional ones. So I'm hoping at a chance to go through it, and I'll just kind of at a high level go through some of the disclosure points that we need to touch on for this year, and then of course into the financial statements themselves. So thank you again, and yeah, I'll get started here. So the public sector accounting, it's PSAB. I'm sure at this point you're well aware that the standards in place for these financial statements. It's a public sector accounting, and there's some specific notes and some specific ways that the statements do present themselves, and just a little different wording. We'll get into all that, but again, we do follow those guidelines and we make sure that the statements do follow all those standards. Now, in terms of the actual opinion itself, you see there that the audit opinion is, what you're expecting it to be. There were no issues, there were no misstatements that were, not cleared or anything like that. So it did get a clean audit opinion. So for the next slide, just touching on from the public sector accounting statements, we also need to provide the financial information return for the province, which is public record, and reports on both financial and non-financial information that Trevor and his team does provide to me. So we're looking at, sustainability and taking those steps to manage both short-term and long-term organizational and financial risks by having that information. And of course, adhering to the PSAB requirements, we produce relevant financial information for the accountability and informed decision-making for the corporation of the Township of Warwick, as well as some comparability to other municipalities. So new for this year, what I wanted to discuss specifically to council is governance. So the next slide here. So we want to touch on that. It is in one of those letters that do get signed, but we do want to disclose this here where, governance is the combination of processes and structures implemented by council to inform, direct, and manage the activities of the municipality towards the achievement of its financial sustainability. And some of those things included as part of that governance is, review of the statements, review of the budgeting process, and variance analysis. And I know that discussion happens between yourself and finance, and that is happening throughout the year. So the next slide, just a little bit more about governance and the processes. So they're promoting appropriate ethics and values within the organization, ensuring the effective organizational performance for management and accountability, communicating risk and control information appropriate to the appropriate areas of the organization, and again, coordinating the activities and communicating information between council, external auditors, and management. So we do look at those processes in place. We want to disclose that as part of this whole audit process that does is involved. Now, next up is internal controls, and those are built into the processes of the organization. We do look at those as part of the audit process, and it includes all measures and practices that are used to mitigate exposures to risk. They operate continuously and are put in place by council and management to adhere at all levels of personnel in the organization and provide that reasonable assurance we're looking for that the organization's objectives will be achieved. A little more on that in the next slide. As external auditors, we assist in the review of the internal control policies and procurement policies and anything like that. And we do make recommendations, along the way. And our process is independent of preparing we are independent of preparing any policy guidelines, of course, or any advisory or, focusing on ensuring that controls and the procedures in place ensure best practices. They protect the municipality from, potentially fraudulent activity and any and identifying steps that would help prevent or detect any wrongdoing. And last up here on the internal controls, the next slide, our review also looks at the efficiency and effectiveness of those controls and procedures in place, ensuring that there's no management override at any level, and that processes maintain appropriate segregation of duties, documentation and authorization at each level required across the departments. So we're looking at all that as part of the audit procedures as well. So independence is next up, and we disclose this as well every year. We do want to stay, and part of our Canadian auditing standards, we require that we communicate annually with you regarding all relationships between the municipality and us that in our professional judgment may affect our independence. The next slide here. In determining which relationships to report, these standards require us to consider relevant rules and related interpretations prescribed by our Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario and any acceptable legislation, covering matters such as, and this is a bit of a list here, but we don't hold any financial interest, either directly or indirectly, in the client, holding a position either directly or indirectly that gives us the right or responsibility to exert any significant influence. A few more on the next slide. Personnel or business relationships of any immediate family, close relatives, partners, or retired partners, either directly or indirectly. Any economic dependence on the client. And finally here, provision of services in addition to the audit engagement. So we do disclose that there's no independence issues or conflicts on any of those items. Next up, we wanted to disclose kind of the responsibilities as auditors. And, as stated in the engagement letter, our responsibility as auditors for your municipality is to express an opinion on whether the statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position, results of operations, and cash flows of the municipality in accordance with the Canadian Public Accounting Audit Standards. Now, an audit is performed to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance as to whether the statements are free of material misstatement. And due to the inherent limitations of an audit, there is some unavoidable risk that some misstatements of the financial statement will not be detected, particularly any intentional misstatements concealed through collusion, even though the audit is properly planned and performed. Next slide is kind of part of the audit approach. We discuss risk assessment, and the procedures selected depend. So the procedures for the job that we do, the audit evidence we gather, depending on the auditor's judgment, including the assessment of risk of material misstatement of the financial statements, whether due to fraud or error. Risk is also assessed for the specific balances and sometimes the transactions themselves to determine areas where audit testing should be increased. An audit also includes evaluating the appropriateness of the accounting policies used by management and the reasonableness of accounting estimates made by management and the overall presentation of the financial statements themselves. A little more on the audit approach on the next slide is examining what we do, examining on a test basis evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in the financial statements, including the departmental budgets. Substantive testing is used with analytical review, which is utilized to attain an appropriate level of evidence for reasonable assurance as required. And then all PSAB accounting standards are to be met, including accrual accounting, and that tangible capital assets are set up on the statements of financial position and amortized annually. And overall changes in the net financial assets or debt are reported based on an annual surplus or deficit in operations, capital purchasing, and changes to reserve balances. Those last two being specific to the PSAB related statements, of course. Next slide is kind of council's responsibilities. That would be, we got a few points here: making known to the auditor any issues of disclosure, corporate governance, fraud, or illegal acts, any non-compliance with laws or regulatory requirements that are known to them, where such matters may impact the statements or independent audit report. Providing guidance and direction to the auditor on any additional work the auditor feels should be undertaken in response to issues raised or concerns expressed. Making inquiries as appropriate into the findings of the audit or of the auditor with respect to corporate governance, management conduct, cooperation, or information flow and systems of internal controls. And the last point here on the next slide is reviewing draft statements prepared by management, including presentation, disclosures, and supporting notes, and any schedules for the accuracy, completeness, and appropriateness. And if required, meeting with the auditor prior to the release and approval of statements, of the financial statements, to review audit disclosure and any compliance issues. And through management, most of that work is done. And if there's any follow-up, we're always here to discuss directly. So the next slide, we always try and outline financial statement highlights. There are a lot of pages here. There's a lot of detail and disclosure. These are what I find to be kind of the more important areas, and we will kind of touch on some of those in the next few slides. And of course, the independent auditor's report, the statement of financial position and whatnot are kind of some of those specific items there. So the next slide is the statement of financial position, or, like a balance sheet, let's say, as a comparative. It has all the assets of the municipality and then the liabilities that are outstanding. You can see, cash, investments and whatnot, receivables making up that $10,800,000 balance. Some of the changes for the year, cash going down, but the investment portion going up. You see that detail there. The other receivables, and some of these items have notes that you probably read that kind of clarify some of the detail. Other receivables jumping up for the related municipal corporations, assets that are out there. And then on the liability side, just an increase in payables, municipal debt going down for payments in the year, and then deferred revenue. Really, that is a specific item. That's the gas tax, that balance outstanding. So that's a deferred liability there. So overall, the net financial surplus of the $6,700,000, and then we have to disclose the tangible capital asset balance, the non-financial assets, which did increase significantly for work done in the year, and then the overall accumulated surplus of $56 million. Now, I do like to tie that right into looking at note 11, which is slide 21. I do apologize, Amanda. It's a few down, I believe. If you don't mind, right there. Yep. Oh, no, one up. Sorry, one more up. It's the accumulated surplus summary. Yes. So I do like to tie that right directly to this. I maybe should make a change in how these are ordered to do that, but I apologize. The accumulated surplus summary shows what surpluses are outstanding, the reserve balances that, of course, are outstanding as well, the amounts in reserves, and then specified reserve funds. So you can see how that 56 million of accumulated surplus is made up. And then the surplus for the year, actually this year, a deficit for the year, which is in there of 269,000. There is the equity in Blue Water Power. The unfunded balance, of course, is tied in with the outstanding debt. And then you have the invested in capital assets right on top of 49 million. Your reserve areas, funds set aside by council for reserves, and then the reserve funds, the water and sewer balances. So that's that breakdown there that shows the changes for the year. And then if you can scroll back up to the statement of changes in net financial assets. Just one, there we go. Okay, so this shows for the year what makes up the net financial surplus, that 6.7 million we showed. So the annual surplus, the 3 million too, and then kind of changes for what happened with tangible capital assets or the non-financial assets. And the term here also comes in where there's the adjustment for the share ownership in laws that are consolidated. So all those figures are factored in. You can see acquisition of tangible capital asset of 4.8 million there. And all that tie in to make the $6.7 million net financial surplus for the year. Next slide is the income statement or the statement of operations. And this breaks down by department, in the revenue side by kind of funding source, and then expenditure side by department, where the related revenues and expenditures were for the year. And you can see that the 10 million of revenue over the 7.2 of expenditure brings that 3.7 million. And then again, we have a laws adjustment for the flow adjustments that we need to factor in as part of the consolidation. And with that balance removed, we have that 3.2 million of annual surplus based on these statements. So those are the first few statements there, and then you'll scroll down again. There's the accumulated surplus summary, which we went through. And then next up is the invested in capital assets. Would you like to show this schedule as kind of, there's big numbers here, but it's essentially by, asset type consolidated for both municipal ownership and the laws ownership of assets. Big additions in the year, including the Northeast Quadrant building, some vehicles, and then the Confederation line and Simcoe Street roads are going to be why there's those bigger additions there. And then we kind of highlight what asset under construction there is for the year. So a lot of work done in that respect. And then the next note up, I believe, is subsequent events, if I'm not out of order here. Essentially, we're highlighting this year specifically for the COVID and COVID-related impacts. We discussed with management what impacts the COVID-19 outbreak may have had on the 2019 numbers. You can read here how, there's some uncertainty, but we did want to disclose what items may have happened subsequent to year end up to the approval or, kind of the issue of these statements, what may have been affected. So we do call to that, and there's some discussion around there. So anyway, I know that's quite a bit to get through in a short time there, but I'll open it up to maybe any questions or any comments that anyone might have at this point.
Council, does anyone have any questions or comments on that? Seeing nothing, I believe we do need to approve that. Do we not, Amanda? That report? Okay.
Yes.
If we could stop screen sharing so I can see council, I would appreciate that. That's great. So we need a mover and a seconder to approve the report. Moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor White. Any questions, comments? All those in favor?
Just
Sorry.
one question. We are in financially good shape, right?
That is very general there, but I mean, yes, in terms of, funding your reserves, increasing those and, doing work that you plan to do and whatnot, that's for sure. And, it's all depending on, kind of what's upcoming and kind of the plan for what kind of infrastructure, capital work that's going to be incoming and all that. Yes, I would agree that you're in good shape. There is some funding that has been done in the year for the municipal corporations. And so depending on, how all that goes. However, overall, the position, better financial surplus or overall financial asset surplus, yes, that's a better position.
And nothing we should be changing?
Procedurally, we're out there on site. I do speak with Trevor, and there is no issues on the management letter, but there is some kind of continuous improvement discussion that we did highlight with him, and kind of been working on that as well. So, that information's been disclosed, but in terms of doing things differently as a municipality, well, I mean, that's council, that's your decision, what you're doing there. But procedurally, I've been definitely working with Trevor, and his team has been great. Trevor's been, doing a lot to kind of get the audit process in better shape at year end, having working papers ready to go. So we are happy to see that. That's been a good improvement over the last couple of years.
Thank you.
What about our capacity to take on more debt? We do have a big project in the works coming up
Right.
for 2021.
I know Trevor can probably speak to that, but as part of the FIR, there is some numbers that fall out of that, and I don't know exactly. I don't have that in front of me, but I know there's some capacity. But I know Trevor's has looked at it.
We will get something from the province once the FIR is reviewed, and it's based upon our own source revenues. So they'll do a scrub of it, and I expect it to probably be in the same level as it's been the past few years. So we're fine. We're more than fine.
All right. Questions often bring up more questions. Any other questions or comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor of receiving and filing that report? That is carried. Thank you very much, Giovanni,
Thank you.
for your patience with our technical issues, and we appreciate you coming out today.
Right.
And we'll probably see you again next year.
Well, sooner than that.
Yes.
Okay.
Great.
All right.
Thanks, John.
Bye-bye.
All right, council, we're going to move on to 13A, which is the current municipal service levels and COVID-19 impacts staff report. Is there any questions or comments on that report? Amanda, is there something you want to highlight?
I just wanted to highlight that while not included in this report, as you know, there's been some provincial announcements in the last week or few days about masking and also about active screening for employees of organizations. So our emergency control group is planning to meet tomorrow to discuss these and kind of the implications on the township. So just wanted to give everyone a heads up that we are looking at that and its impacts on our operations. And then unrelated to COVID necessarily, but we didn't have it pre-listed as a staff update, but we did have a water main break recently, and I thought I might ask Andrew at this time to give us a brief overview, if that was okay with you, Mayor Roberts.
Yes, thank you. I just saw your note there in the chat. So Andrew, can you give us an update on that?
I can, thank you. Last night received a phone call that there was a reported water main break on Sunset Ave, just in the low gully area. So Aqua dispatched as appropriate. They slowed the flow of the water main down just so it wouldn't damage the road overnight. They barricaded it off, and it's, to my knowledge, it is repaired as we speak. So that's all fixed up. And I don't think there was really a loss of water. There wasn't a total loss of water to the residents, so everybody should have been able to carry on. It might have been a brief shutdown today, but as far as I understand, they repaired it with limited disruption. So that's good.
Thank you.
Hey, Councillor Westgate.
There still seems to be some questions from the public of who to call. I know I got a call and then Wayne got a call. I went down last night when I did get home, just to make sure, and they were already there. But sometimes it's nice to go down and look, because the usually not as bad as what the public thinks they are.
Wayne, Councillor Morris, did you have a question or comment?
Not really. I got a call and I went in and he said it was a gusher, and I was waiting to see something flying 4 feet out of the air, and it was just bubbling out of the concrete. So I called the emergency number at Aqua, and that was it. I touched base with Andrew after with a bit of the communication of shutting the road or not. Should I have called you, Andrew, at the same time I called Aqua to give you a heads up?
I mean, it wasn't that much longer, but yeah, give me a shout, and that way, because I'll get in touch with Aqua right away and make sure that they're in communication with whoever needs to be, whether it's Rick or.
Well, they were very good. They were on the site within, I don't know, say 40 minutes. I went in about 15 minutes after Ivan called me, and they were there within 40 minutes. I just sat there with my 4-ways on.
Yep.
Well, it sounds like we have a good team that responded right away and it got handled, so that's good news.
Excellent. Thanks for letting me throw that in there. Thanks, Andrew.
No problem. Any other questions about that report? We need a motion to receive and file that. Moved by Councillor Westgate, seconded by Councillor Morris, all in favor. That is carried. We will go on to Bridge 35 tender award recommendation. Councillor Morris, are you moving that?
I guess I'm going to ask Andrew the same question. Where's 35?
I apologize for that. So this is just, it's on Zion line, just before you get to London line. The big bridge.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's in the plans, but it wasn't in my actual report.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? We do need a motion to approve that. So moved by Councillor Morris, seconded by Councillor White, all in favor. That is carried. Thank you. And that is the last report on the agenda. We have no committee or other minutes and no new business. So we are going to move into a closed session. We do need a motion to do that as well. Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Westgate, all in favor. That is carried. And Andrew and Teresa, I think you guys are good to go. Thank you for attending today.